All right, we're back on Bible Geography, part number 2, week number 9. We were looking at the Assyrians before the break, and we're continuing that on their leaders. As we get on, we are at letter C, number 3. Shalmaneser reigned from 727 to 722 BC. Hoshea refused to pay him tribute. As we've been looking, we were just looking at 2 Kings chapter 16, and we saw where there were those that gave tribute to him, gave tribute to Tiglath-Pileser II to come and take care of their enemies. But as we look here in 2 Kings 17, you'll see as they rise up against the Assyrians here, verse number 1. Look at verse number 1 of 2 Kings 17. It says, "In the 12th year of Ahaziah, king of Judah, began Hoshea the son of Elah to reign in Samaria over Israel 9 years. And he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, but not as the kings of Israel that were before him." So you have a king, you have the king of Samaria, you have the king of Israel. Of course, you have Judah and Israel here at this point. And this king here is Hoshea, and he rises up against Shalmaneser, the king of Assyria. And Hoshea, in verse number 3, became his servant and gave him presents. And the king of Assyria found conspiracy in Hoshea, for he had sent messengers to So, king of Egypt, and brought no present to the king of Assyria. So now he's looking to Egypt for help against the Assyrians at this point. In verse number 4, as he had done year by year. Therefore the king of Assyria shut him up and bound him in prison. You got to understand, he was supposed to be paying tribute, so there was some control over Israel at this point. Remember, we've looked in times past in geography where you would have garrisons that were placed further out from where a nation might be, but they had control over the area where those garrisons were. Remember David, he had garrisons further out than where the nation would have been. And so I think what you have here is, of course, they've come in, they have troops there, and now you see that Hoshea is looking for help from the king of Egypt, and he's turned against the king of Assyria. So what does the king of Assyria do? He shuts him up and he binds him in prison. Verse number 5, "Then the king of Assyria came up throughout all the land and went up to Samaria and besieged it 3 years. In the 9th year of Hoshea, the king of Assyria took Samaria and carried Israel away into Assyria and placed them in Halah and in Habor by the river of Gozan and in the cities of the Medes." So you have here in 2 Kings and in verses 1 through 7 here, verses 1 through 6, you have where now you have Samaria, you have Israel taken captive by the Assyrians here in the passage. And we see even in 2 Kings 18 and verses 9 through 10, we have an account here as well. Verses 9 through 10, it says, "And it came to pass in the 4th year of King Hezekiah, which was the 7th year of Hoshea, son of Elah, king of Israel, that Shalmaneser, king of Assyria, came up against Samaria and besieged it. And at the end of 3 years they took it. Even in the 6th year of Hezekiah, that is in the 9th year of Hoshea, king of Israel, Samaria was taken." So they're telling you, okay, now you have the year of this king of Judah and the year of this king of Israel. And so we see Samaria, which is another name for the nation of Israel, the northern kingdom, is taken captive there. And so that's something to remember as you're studying your Bible. You see that the northern kingdom was taken. Later, Judah will be taken by the Babylonians years later. And so we see this occurrence here. Now, Sargon II, back in our notes, we see here, he was the immediate successor of Shalmaneser, and he's mentioned in Isaiah 20 and verse number 1. Turn over there and at least you can take a look at it and you see it for yourself. Isaiah 20 and verse number 1. It says, "In the year that Tartan came unto Ashdod, when Sargon the king of Assyria sent him and fought against Ashdod and took it. At the same time spake the Lord by Isaiah the son of Amoz, saying, Go and loose the sackcloth from off thy loins and put off thy shoe from thy foot. And he did so, walking naked and barefoot." Of course, this is where Isaiah is prophesying here. But you see here in verse number 1, when Sargon, the king of Assyria, sent him, that is, he sent Tartan came into Ashdod. So you see the occurrence here. He's mentioned here in chapter 20 and verse number 1. This king is considered the most powerful Assyrian ruler. That is Sargon. Sennacherib, which was Sargon's son, reigned from 705 to 681 BC, and he tried to take Judah during the time of Hezekiah. Now turn back to 2 Kings 19 and see this occurrence here. 2 Kings 19. 2 Kings 19, verse number 32. Verse number 32, it says, "Therefore thus saith the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, He shall not come into this city, nor shoot an arrow there, nor come before it with shield, nor cast a bank against it. By the way that he came, by the same shall he return, and shall not come into this city, saith the Lord. For I will defend this city to save it for mine own sake and for my servant David's sake." And so you see here, this is concerning, of course, the prayer of Hezekiah. In fact, let's look at this for just a minute. Look at verse 14 of the same chapter. Look back at verse 14 of 2 Kings 19. It says, "And Hezekiah received the letter." This is the letter here that's given to him. And in verse 14 he says, "And Hezekiah received the letter of the hand of the messengers and read it. And Hezekiah went up into the house of the Lord and spread it before the Lord. And Hezekiah prayed before the Lord and said, O Lord God of Israel, which dwellest between the cherubims, thou art the God, even thou alone, of all the kingdoms of the earth. Thou hast made heaven and earth. Lord, bow down thine ear and hear. Open, Lord, thine eyes and see, and hear the words of Sennacherib, which hath sent him to reproach the living God. Of a truth, Lord, the kings of Assyria have destroyed the nations and their lands." Remember, you've already seen Israel, Samaria, that's been taken. And the Lord, and Hezekiah now, the king of Judah, he's getting word, he's getting a letter from the Assyrians that they're going to come and take Judah as well. But he goes and he prays before the Lord. He has this letter, he spreads it out, and he prays before the Lord and talks to the Lord and asks for help. And here in verse number 16 he says, "Lord, bow down thine ear and hear. Open, Lord, thine eyes and see, and hear the words of Sennacherib, which hath sent him to reproach the living God. Of a truth, Lord, the kings of Assyria have destroyed the nations and their lands, and have cast their gods into the fire. For they were no gods, but the work of men's hands, wood and stone. Therefore they have destroyed them. Now therefore, O Lord our God, I beseech thee, save thou us out of his hand, that all the kingdoms of the earth may know that thou art the Lord God, even thou only." Notice who comes and speaks to Hezekiah. "Then Isaiah, the son of Amoz, sent to Hezekiah, saying, Thus saith the Lord God of Israel, That which thou hast prayed to me against Sennacherib, king of Assyria, I have heard. This is the word that the Lord hath spoken concerning him. The virgin, the daughter of Zion, hath despised thee, and laughed thee to scorn. The daughter of Jerusalem hath shaken her head at thee. Whom hast thou reproached and blasphemed? And against whom hast thou exalted thy voice, and lifted up thine eyes on high, even against the Holy One of Israel? By thy messengers thou hast reproached the Lord, and hast said, With the multitude of my chariots I come up to the height of the mountains, to the sides of Lebanon, and will cut down the tall cedar trees thereof, and the choice fir trees thereof, and I will enter into the lodgings of his borders, and into the forest of his Carmel. I have digged and drunk strange waters, and with the sole of my feet have I dried up all the rivers of besieged places. Hast thou not heard long ago how I have done it, and of ancient times that I have formed it? Now have I brought it to pass that thou shouldest be to lay waste fenced cities into ruinous heaps. Therefore their inhabitants were of small power. They were dismayed and confounded. They were as the grass of the field, and as the green herb, as the grass on the housetops, and as corn blasted before it be grown up. But I know thy abode, and thy going out, and thy coming in, and thy rage against me. Because thy rage against me, and thy tumult is come up into mine ears, therefore I will put my hook in thy nose, and my bridle in thy lips, and I will turn thee back by the way by which thou camest. And this shall be a sign unto thee, ye shall eat this year such things as grow themselves, in the second year which springeth up the same, and in the third year sow ye and reap and plant vineyards and eat the fruits thereof. And the remnant that is escaped to the house of Judah shall yet again take root downward and bear fruit upward. For out of Jerusalem shall go forth a remnant, and they that escape out of Mount Zion, the zeal of the Lord's host shall do this. Therefore thus saith the Lord concerning the king of Assyria, He shall not come into this city, nor shoot an arrow there, nor come before it with shield, nor cast a bank against it. By the way that he came, by the same shall he return, and shall not come into this city, saith the Lord. For I will defend this city to save it for mine own sake and for my servant David's sake. And it came to pass that night that the angel of the Lord went out and smote in the camp of the Assyrians 185,000. And when they arose early in the morning, behold, they were all dead corpses. So Sennacherib king of Assyria departed and went and returned and dwelt at Nineveh. And it came to pass, as he was worshipping in the house of Nisroch his god, that Adrammelech and Sharezer his son smote him with a sword, and they escaped into the land of Armenia, and Esarhaddon his son reigned in his stead. You may say, well, you read a lot there, but I just wanted to show you the Assyrians were powerful. They had destroyed other kingdoms. They had destroyed other nations. But you know what? What happened? Hezekiah prayed. He got before the Lord and prayed and asked for God's help and for God's blessing and for God to intervene and to take care of this enemy. And the Assyrians were very powerful at this point. But what happened? The angel of the Lord. The angel of the Lord killed 185,000 troops. The angel of the Lord. 185,000 in one night. And so you see that, and I know this isn't geography, but I think it's something that you ought to at least consider, how that the Lord Himself could take care of a whole army in one night, how He can take care of anything that's in your life. He destroyed a very powerful army that at this point the Assyrians were a very powerful nation on the earth. And He just wiped them, He wiped their army out. And Sennacherib had to return. And what happens? He goes back to Nineveh, and his sons kill him upon returning home. And they flee into Armenia, which, if you look at your Old Testament map, is just north of where Nineveh is. In fact, even a place in that area named that to this day. But what happens to the Assyrians? Well, the Assyrians, we see here that Sennacherib's grandson would take the kingdom, and he went later to take Egypt. But the Assyria declined after his death. The Assyrians were conquered by the Chaldeans, the Medes, and the Persians, and they would later they retreated to Haran. In fact, if you look at your map, Haran on this map, there's some question marks as to where it is. But if you look at your Old Testament world map, it's just up off of the river Euphrates there, just north. In fact, if you look up Haran, and that's if the location is totally correct, but if you look at even today, it's just to the southern end, southeastern end of Turkey, modern-day Turkey today. But they were defeated by the Medes in the Battle of Carchemish in 605 BC. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and stop there for tonight, and we'll pick back up under the new Babylonian Empire next week, and then we'll get further into our notes. We're going to be going into, after this section, we'll actually go back to the start of the Bible and work our way through some things for geography. But that is the lesson for tonight. Thank you all so very much. Hope you have a good evening.